Excellent stuff. So we're here for AAT Level 4, Management Accounting, Decision and Controls. And if I just switch off that opening slides, I'm just going to share my other screen. So hopefully that'll come through in a second. So I do want to stop that. Cool. Excellent. It's actually pinged forward. So I'm just going to go through, for those of you that are new and those of you that haven't seen kind of videos from last time, just want to go through a little refresher of kind of like the structure and the format of what we're going to be doing over these sessions. So my intention really is to get you guys just kind of like ticking over in terms of knowledge. I'm really here kind of on a weekly basis to kind of help to keep you motivated and to help to keep your knowledge up to date. So when it comes to the exams being available again, you're ready to go, ready to take the exams, and then hopefully we can move through. And for a lot of you, it's going to be a case of finishing this qualification completely, and then we can move on to ACCA or to CIMA or to ICW or any qualification afterwards. Or if you're, if this is the point that you're going to finish, you've then got your certificate, you've got your letters, and we're happy and we can move on. And at least, this whole situation hasn't slowed us down as much as it could have done, if we, just didn't really, didn't have that impetus to continue to study all the way through it. Now, the format of these sessions is very much, for me, going to be the same every single week. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through a question. So I'm going to pick a question, and it's either going to be a past AAT exam question, it's going to be a question from an AAT mock exam, or it's going to be a question that covers the same sort of syllabus content, syllabus area. And I'm really going to use it as a little bit of a teaching tool and a little bit of a tool to help you prepare for the exam, to give you ideas of how to present answers, how to put things together, how to work quickly, and little tips that I have to really help you maximize your marks in the exam. So the first thing is that there'll be a question. We will work through that question. We'll complete that question. Okay, then the next thing that's going to happen after the session we're together, I'm going to send you an email. Now that email is going to be sent out, and I would hope it's going to be out within a day or so of finishing today. Obviously last week it was a bit later because there were issues with the recording. Let me just check the recording is working. Yes, it is. So there'll be an email, and on that email it will have two things. It will have a link to the recording. So that means if you missed the session, or you didn't follow something, or you think actually that's not useful for me today, but it may be useful for me in 3 weeks' time when I'm doing something, when I'm planning to do a different phase of revision, you've got it available to look at. Just be careful with those recordings. They are password protected. There will be a password sent out for you, and it's always worth checking if that when you've got kind of like a straight line. Be careful, because sometimes it can be kind of the number one, sometimes it can be a lowercase l, and sometimes it's worth just trying both of them when you're putting the figures into Zoom. So there'll be a link to recording, and there'll be an attachment, and that attachment will have the question for next week. Now, I'm not, I'm not going to be here to kind of like look at, did you do homework or anything like that? The question really is there for you to get an idea of, this is the subject that's going to be covered. And you might look at the subject that's going to be covered and think, actually, that's not relevant to me. Okay, I know that stuff really, really well. I don't need to bother logging onto this one. Or it might be the case that you think, well, actually, I want to practice that question beforehand. So I've had a go at it, and I want to see what Dave says when he goes through it. Or it could be that it gives you a trigger to revise that particular subject area. And really, the next thing that's going to happen after that is, the next live session. Okay, so next Tuesday, and that's my intention, is to go through that on a rolling basis. The topics that we cover, I'm going to be mixing things up. There is going to be a slight focus towards areas that are more examinable than others, but I am, willing to kind of like take guidance from some of you guys. So lots of you are saying, I really want loads of questions on ratios. We'll have a look at a few more questions on ratios. But I am going to try and give complete syllabus coverage. So what I intend to do, and I've got, where is it? Just here a little breakdown of our exam. So what I would intend to do is over the course of, say, 8 weeks or so, I'll be expecting to go through a question that looks at each of those different areas of the syllabus, okay, or is it in the style of some of those? So if those of you that have been here already, we know that week 1, I looked at a question that was kind of a question 1 type question. Okay, and then we also know that week 2, we looked at a kind of a variance analysis, ethical consideration type question. Last time, it was more about performance indicators, and we looked at profit margins and things like that. Today, it's going to be kind of a decision-making type of area. So that's really what I'll be looking at, is week after week after week, looking at different areas of the syllabus to try and get as much coverage as possible. There are certain topic areas that I may actually invite people that are kind of doing other qualifications to come along, because it's relevant to them. So things like some of the variance analysis stuff. I've got 1 or 2 students that are studying ACCA that I think would benefit from doing a bit of revision of variance analysis as well. So there might be some other people joining us in some of these as well. But most of the time, it's going to be based around our exam and the exams that we're going to be taking, questions that we're going to be sitting. Okay, and the other thing that I kind of wanted to run through, and I apologise to the people that were here on the first day, because you've already heard this before, but it's something that I really believe in, and it's something that I've done a bit of research on, and one of the things I'm really interested in, as well as accountancy, is I'm really interested in kind of how the brain works, how the mind works, how memory works, and ultimately how that then translates into exam success. And there's some studies that I was looking at a little while ago, and I actually looked into this at the beginning part of this year, and it was that period just after Christmas, before New Year, when I was kind of like, didn't have much that I've worked to, so I was reading loads and loads of stuff, doing loads of research, and there were some studies done about performance in exams, and what things indicated the fact that people did well in exams. And if I kind of like draw a little kind of graph, because I love graphs, okay, and if we drew on a graph, okay, the details of the marks that people got in the exam. Okay, so what marks did you get in the exam? And there are some people that you've got, say, 0 up to 100%. Not many people get 100%. And I'm going to map something else on the other axis. Okay, and they did a load of studies that said, well, is there a relationship between the marks people get in the exam and something else? Okay, and they discovered this relationship. Okay, and a brilliant relationship. Okay, so when we look at statistical information paper, we know there's that correlation, okay, between something and marks. Okay, and there's a little presentation that's kind of these research people did that I watched, and I was utterly fascinated with, because they asked the question, well, what is it, okay, that you can relate exactly to the number of marks that people get in the exam? And they said, well, what do you think, okay, that the top performing people do in an exam, the people that are getting really high marks, getting distinction in the exam, do? What is it that they do that people at the other end don't do? What is the difference between high performers and people that don't perform well? And they kind of asked a load of students the question, what do you think it drives that relationship? And the first thing people guessed, okay, is people guessed, first of all, how intelligent you are. And they said, surely if you're clever, you're going to get more marks than if you're not so clever. Okay, and they said, well, cleverness you can measure by IQ. Okay, what IQ people have got, how clever, how naturally gifted someone is. And when they looked at people's intelligence quotas, if it was intelligence score, and then mapped out students' intelligence score, and then said, well, what marks did these people get in exams? Okay, there wasn't a relationship. Okay, so IQ doesn't have an impact. It does have a slight impact, but it doesn't really drive high performance in exams. So it's not IQ. And that kind of makes sense to me, because I know some ridiculously intelligent people that I went to school with that did really badly in exams. Okay, and I also know some people that I didn't think were particularly bright, but got really good marks in the exams. So, IQ, we think that it doesn't have an impact. And then the scary things are, then people said, well, what other things could impact the number of grants got IQ? And then they said, well, I know it's got to be the amount of work then. Okay, because I think the students all thought, well, the teachers want me to say it's the amount of work, and they found out, no, it's not at all. Okay, so you could do loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of work, and you can still get poor marks, and you could do not much work, and you can still get good marks. Okay, there isn't a relationship really between the amount of work someone does and the number of marks that they get. Okay, well, which is kind of a bit of a lie, but amount of work doesn't do it. Number 3, okay, they revealed this is the thing that drives results in the exam, okay, and they said that when they looked at the amount of question practice people did, okay, when you measure the amount of question practice that people do versus the marks they get in the exam, that has got the biggest impact in the marks that you get. Okay, it's not about the amount of work that you do, it's about the amount of questions you practice. Okay, and you know, when I kind of marry that up with other work that I looked at and other research that I did, it makes absolute sense, because what a lot of people do when they do a lot of work is a lot of people will make their own notes, a lot of people will make their own flashcards, a lot of people will, you know, design a wonderful poster. But when you're doing all of those things, you know, you're not, you know, testing your learning, you're not testing your knowledge, you're just writing down some stuff that you know. When you do a question, you're testing your knowledge, and when you get a question wrong, you then investigate why you get it wrong, and you don't make that mistake next time, and every time it's pushing marks up. Okay, so that's why on these sessions, my focus is going to be on this thing here, on question practice, because question practice is the single biggest driver of exam success. Okay, so the more questions we do, the higher our marks are going to get. Okay, so if I can advise you to do anything, okay, it will be do more questions. So if over the course of next week you're thinking, oh, what should I do with my studies for decision and controls? Do 2 extra questions, do 1 extra question. Okay, even if the question is hard. And I actually prefer it if students come along and say, oh, I did a question and I only got 50%. Okay, that to me says you did a question that challenged you, you now recognize where's the problem, and now we can move on and we can learn something new. If you get a question right and you get 100%, well, that's, you know, it's showing off a bit, isn't it? Okay, you've not learned anything, you've just demonstrated that you've got loads of knowledge in that particular area. So loads of question practice, that's what I'm going to do, that's what I'm hoping you guys are going to do. Okay, so the question that I emailed out. Okay, now I said before, what I'm going to be looking at is past AAT exams or mock AAT exams or questions that we've got that mirror AAT syllabus. This question here is from a AAT mock exam. Okay, so AAT mock exam, it is task number 7, and we know task number 7, decision making. And as it says there will be a written report, 18 marks in total. So the joint highest mark allocation in our exam is going to be for question number 7. As we've said before, the written element is the element that most students score worse at. Okay, so most students tend to be okay with numbers. When it comes to the written elements, that's when they struggle. Okay, now decision making is one of the areas of the syllabus that's really wide ranging. So there are some things in this paper like we've seen in terms of things like target costing, life cycle costing, making decisions around things like that. And we've got elements of things like NPV and net present cost and things like that that's still in this syllabus. And there are lots of things that have come from level 3 that are still examinable and tested here. So I always think that the task 7 is a tough task just because it can pull things from all over the syllabus from loads of different areas. Now, when you contrast it with, you know, task 5, it's going to be about variances. If you know your variances, you're going to do brilliantly in task 5. If you're not sure with your variances, you're not going to score as well. Okay, but with task 7, so many different things can be tested. So I've got a nice question here, question 7 on decision making. This is our task. Okay. So, same as last time, when we read a question, okay, I always have a look at the top. Okay, and you know, look at the first sentence or the first line, and just to give you an idea about what the business is, what the business does. This is rubbish because it says a business has. Okay, brilliant. I'd much rather they told me what the business name was. I'd much rather they told me what they made, what they did, all of those things, but they don't. Okay, so then there's a load of narrative. And as I said last time, I don't see the point in reading the narrative here, okay, without knowing what you're actually going to be doing in the question. Once you know what the question is going to be asking you, once you know what you've got to present to the examiner, then come back and read it. So I've got a load of narrative here, we've got a big table, and then part A says, complete the table to show the optimal production plan using the current inventory, show all kilograms, all pounds figures to 2 decimal places. Okay, well, first thing, complete a table. Okay, now I really like it when they ask me to do that because it's really clear exactly what I need to fill in. So I can see it's 8 marks. I can also see from the table, I'm just going to put a little red dot here, that I've got 3 products, 1, 2, 3, 4 individual boxes. Okay, 8 marks, and I've got to complete a total of 12 boxes and type 12 numbers in there. Okay, that's quite a lot of work that I need to do to just give me 8 marks. Okay, so there's quite a lot in there in terms of calculations. So I'm going to have to be relatively quick when I start going through the numbers. Okay, so I can see 8 marks, that's going to be quite tough. Then underneath, over the page even, part B, calculate the following. What is the maximum profit resulting from the optimal production plan? Okay, so that's the case of typing a number into a box there, and suddenly I've got 3 marks for 1 box. So already I'm thinking, they're giving me 8 marks for 12 boxes to type stuff in the first part, and then 3 marks for 1 box here. So I'm expecting this one's going to be hard. Okay, I'm expecting the first ones are going to be relatively straightforward. And this is the game that I'm always playing to start with, is when I read the question, I'm looking at the number of marks that are available. I'm looking at the amount of work that I need to do. And I'm starting to think, well, how much effort am I going to have to put in? And should it be difficult? So if I can do this in like 2 seconds, I'm thinking I've probably made a mistake. Okay, but if it's taking me half an hour to do all of that, I'm thinking I've probably read too much into it. So the mark allocations give you an indication of how long you should be spending on work. And then I've got part C, explain why the company cannot fulfill its total sales demands and why it's chosen to make the quantities of each product. You may use calculations to support your answer. Total of 7 marks. Okay, that's our written element. That's the bit we know people are going to do badly in. Now, I know some of you were here 2 weeks ago when we went through a written question 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if anyone can remember, and if you can remember, put it in the chat. But in a question like this, where you've got a written element, there is 1 word in these questions that I would say half the people reading or answering this question are going to misunderstand. And they're going to think it means something completely different. And I always think of it as the single most important question, or single most important word in one of these questions. Does anyone remember what word it was? I kind of obsess about this word. Oh, brilliant stuff. Everyone's saying it. Absolutely, it is the word and. Okay, and we know that this is important because so many students think that and means full stop, finish the question, don't answer anything after it. So loads of people will answer this question, explain why the company cannot fulfill its total sales demand, finish, that's my question, that's all I'm going to write about. Okay, whereas what we know is there's a bit after it that says, and why it's chosen to make the quantities of each product. Okay, so we've got 1 part of the question here. We've got another part of the question here after the and, so we know there's 2 parts of the question here. It says you may use calculations to support your answer. Okay, now if it tells you, oh, you might want to do this, okay, I would almost take that as you really should do this because this is what I'm expecting you to do. Okay, so a suggestion like that, you may use calculations to support your answer. I would do that because I think that's what the examiner is going to be looking for. Perfect. I am so happy that 5 people have pinged up in the chat said and. Okay, that makes my day, absolutely. And when you go into the exam, when you see that word and, okay, it should make you smile. because you look at the word and you think, brilliant, I know there's 2 bits to this question, but everyone else that's taking this exam, okay, is not going to spot that and, okay, and they're not going to answer the question as fully as you are. And when you start thinking about that line, about, you know, where people are performing really, really well and the people that aren't performing as well, you know those people are the people that are behind you because they don't have the technique you've got. So love the word and. Right, so we can go through and look at the question. I know what I've got to do. I've got to do a big table full of numbers, then a small bit of numbers, and then I've got to do a written element. So 3 parts for my 18 marks in this question. So let's read through. We've got a business has 1,600 kilograms of material in inventory. So in our warehouse, we've got 1,600 kilograms, which it can use to manufacture 3 products. Product X, product Y, and product Z. Okay. Again, not very inspiring in terms of what they're calling their products. There is a shortage of the material due to a strike at the supplier's factory, which is expected to last for 1 month. So we're being told that we may not be able to get hold of any materials. The information in the table below relates to a normal month and assumes that the maximum sales demand for each product is met. The specific fixed cost for these products is 755. Now I'm going to flag this up now, but this bit here, the specific fixed cost for these 3 products of 755. Okay, that's just really sneaky. Okay, they're throwing it in here as kind of like a little throwaway line, and there are loads of people in the exam that are just going to forget that's there. Okay, so, you know, when we're going through and we're reading stuff and they're telling you about various different costs and different numbers, you know, for the most part, they don't give you, you know, information that's useless. There tends to be a purpose for the numbers they've got in there. And I think it's really sneaky the way they put that there in the question. So what they're telling us here is that, you know, we have got some kind of limiting resource or some kind of limiting factor. Okay, and they could quite easily ask us a question like this. They could ask us, you know, questions in terms of, you know, kind of discursive questions about why businesses may be restricted in the things that they do. So why is it that a business can't, you know, make as much money as it wants to? What are the things that will restrict our business and stop us from doing the things we want to? So as a bit of revision, businesses are going to have a limiting factor. Every business, every one of you guys has got a limiting factor. You've all got something that's restricting you from doing all the things that you want to do. Okay, and those restrictions we always remember as being 5 things that begin with M. Okay, so 5 M's, okay, are 5 things that can restrict a business from doing everything that it wants to do. Okay, so one of those is the one we've got here in this question, materials. So we could be restricted in terms of materials. There could be a limit to the amount of materials we can get our hands on. Okay, and we all know at the moment there's a huge shortage of lots and lots of stuff out there. So I don't know if anyone has spotted any shortages of anything that they're trying to buy. I don't know if anyone's tried to buy stuff from the shops and just not had it in stock. Try to see if anyone's got any ideas. Oh, bread flour. So 2 people, flour, yeast, masks, eggs. Christina, you really short of eggs? So if you live close to me, Christina, there's an egg farm, there's a chicken farm like about a mile from my house, and they've got a ridiculous amount of eggs, chocolate drops for cakes, flour. I bet you've got sanitizer. I bought some sanitizer yesterday, and it was like a brand I'd never heard of, and I opened it and it just smelled of vodka. It was just ridiculously strong. It like almost made me cry. It was horrid. So loads of people got sanitizer. Okay. Other things I found out recently that are in short supply is bikes. I don't know if anyone's tried to get a bike, but it's my son's birthday in the near future and he wants a bike, and I can't find a bike anywhere. Okay, it's really difficult to find a bike that will fit him. So that's something that I know is in short supply. Lucky I have chickens. Yeah. That's cool. Good. I like that. Yeah, my kids wanted to get chickens a little while ago, and kind of, I'm glad we've got the chicken farm near us, but yeah, that would have helped us out a little bit as well. My kids also are desperate to get a puppy. They really want to get a dog, but we had a little look online with them, and every single puppy place out there is sold out puppies, so they're in a massive short supply as well.
We tried to get a trampoline for a long time, and
right.
it just got...
Other M's. Okay, so can anyone think of anything else beginning with M that might restrict what a business can do? So maybe not present in this question, but that we might come across. Excellent. So oh, brilliant. Money. Okay, I like the fact that everyone was straight. Money, minutes. Okay. Manpower. Right, so Emma and Joshua, you've actually got exactly the same answer, but just to refer to it slightly different things. So Emma, you said manpower in terms of the amount of people that you have, and Joshua, you said minutes. Okay, now I would look at those two things as being very similar. The amount of time that we've got, the amount of manpower or person power we've got. And Emma, you're right, we call it manpower because it begins with M, but really we mean labour or people or something like that. But yeah, absolutely right. So manpower. We've got money. Okay, Joshua, the other thing you could measure in terms of minutes as well is the amount of time that you've got in machinery. So if you've got one machine, okay, or everyone seems to be baking at the moment, well, if they can find eggs and flour, they seem to be baking. If you've got an oven or something like that, then there's a limit to the amount of time that oven can be on. It can only be on 24 hours a day. You can only fill it with a certain, like 3 shelves of cakes. Okay, so there's a limit to what you can produce with that particular oven. The other one that we haven't got, which is I think more difficult, is market demand. Hey, there's a limit to the amount of products that people actually want to buy. And every business is going to be restricted by one of those 5 different things. Okay, so, the businesses you work for is going to be restricted by one of those 5 things. We're all personally restricted, okay, by one of those things as well. Okay, so, I know that for most of you, it's almost certainly going to be money. Okay, because if you had, more money, you'd probably be doing something a little bit different to the things that you're doing right now. You might be working somewhere different, you might be living somewhere different. Okay, but all of that's restricted because of the amount of money that you have. Okay, so I always kind of remember those kind of like restrictions. So if they ask you about limiting factor, I know that Matt, Sarah's saying that her time is manpower for her. That is her limiting factor as to what she can do. I absolutely understand that. Trying to homeschool children and trying to work is really, really tough. Cool. So if they do ask you a written question about what could restrict you or scarce resources, something like that, 5 M's, that gives you the framework to answer the question. Now, the one we've highlighted there, money, there's an entire exam based around, cash management. In the AAT syllabus, so they tend to think that's one of the most important of those limiting factors for us to know about. Okay, I feel your pain studying with kids around is near enough impossible. Yeah, because having to learn their schoolwork in order to help teach them and learn your own stuff, it's tough. Cool. So just wanted to go through that as kind of just a little reminder of the kind of things that we might get asked in this section. Okay, and then we've got our questions. So we've got 3 products, product X, product Y, product Z. We've got variable costs for each of them. We've got a selling price for each of them. We've got the number of units that we want to sell, the maximum required material, so the material required to meet maximum demand, 800 for product X, 480 for product Y, 720 for product Z. And what I could quickly do is if I just add those 3 up, that means that I know that I need 800 plus 480 is 1280, so that's 19, that's 20, that's 2,000 kilograms. So I can see that I've only got 1,600 kilograms available. Okay, so I can see there's a problem there. See, I've got 2,000 kilograms. I need 2,000 kilograms. I've only got 1,600. So I can't make everything that I want to this month because of what that shortage, because of the strike at the supplier's factory. Okay, so someone's saying that there is a bit of noise in the background from someone. So let me just check participants' lists. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that everyone's muted. Okay, because if you're not muted, then sometimes kind of background noise can come in, it can cut in and out. Okay, so I've just kind of gone through and made sure that everyone's muted. Okay, if you do want to say anything, okay, press space bar and then go through. Cool. So we need to know which products to produce. And most of the time, what people will do is people will look and say, well, I've got product X, product Y, product Z, which one makes most money? Okay, now in this case, you've got variable costs, you've got sales costs. So when I'm comparing sales price with just variable costs, okay, what we call that is contribution. We're saying that we're making excess revenue over and above our variable cost, and that contributes towards our fixed costs. So for product X, I sell for £4, variable cost of £1.50, that gives me a contribution of £2.50. Okay, so this is just what sales price minus variable cost. So product X gives me £2.50. Product Y, £3 minus £1.40. Product Y gives me £1.60. Product Z, £5 minus £2.30 is £2.70. Okay, now some people, I know, will do a question like this and they'll sit there and say, but that was too easy. Okay, remember the marks though. Remember there were, what, 8 marks going to fill in 12 numbers in these boxes. Okay, so they can't ask you anything too difficult when the mark allocation is so small for 12 boxes. Okay, so that is quite a nice thing to put together. Now, what some people will look at here is they'll sit there and say, well, actually, product Z, that makes a lot of money. We like product Z. Okay, but product Y, not as much money. We don't like product Y as much. Okay, and they forget that what the issue in this question is that we're running out of material. We don't have enough material. It's not about how much contribution each product makes on its own. It's about how efficiently they use the material. So we might make £2.70, but if we make £2.70 and we have to use half of our material to get £2.70, that might not be such a good deal. So that's why we need to compare it with the amount of material required per unit. So what do we know? We know product X needs 800 kilograms to make 400 units. That is 800 divided by 400. That is 2 kilograms per unit. Okay, product Y needs 480 kilograms to make 600 units. So 480 divided by 600. Product Y only needs 0.80 kilograms. Okay, so we can see there already, product X might make more money than product Y per unit, but it uses more than double the amount of materials. And then product Z, we need 720 kilograms to make 400 units. Dividing one by the other, that means 1.80 kilograms. Okay. So we've got the numbers then. We've got the amount of kilograms of material needed for each product. We've got the amount of money it generates for each unit that we produce. Now, what I care about is not the total amount of contribution, but the contribution that I earn for every kilogram that I use. Okay, now to do that, and you do need to be a little bit careful here because the examiner is not as nice as you think. And there is something that I just think is just quite mean here, is that product X, if we just look at product X, if I want to work out the contribution per kilogram, well, I'm going to do that by taking the amount of contribution and dividing it by the amount of material required. So in this case, contribution is £2.50, material 2.0 kilograms. And that is £1.25 per kilogram. So £1.25. Excellent. Now, the reason why I say that that's kind of really sneaky is that when you put things together in a table like this, now if I was designing this as a spreadsheet, okay, the way that I would write it as a spreadsheet is I would put contribution, I'd put number of kilograms underneath, and then I would divide the top one by the bottom one to get the cost per kilogram. And I would follow a logical flow, kind of working down a page of my calculations. That's logically how I would put together my spreadsheet, how I'd logically put together my workings, because that's how my brain works, and most people's brain works, is we start at the top of the page and we read down the page and do the calculations in order. But what you've got here is you've got contribution and you've got kilograms above it, and you kind of like pretend contribution, divide it by the thing above it to get the thing below, and it's just not in that logical reading it top to bottom fashion. And it's almost as if the AAT and the examiner have written this in such a way to make you, to almost make you kind of make that mistake, to not concentrate properly and read it wrong and divide the top one by the bottom one. It's just the way that it's laid out isn't that logical way. And what it does show me is it does show me if you've got it right, you've read this question properly and you really understand it. Okay, because some people might go into this exam thinking, I'm always going to follow exactly the same process, and I learned the process, but I don't understand why I do it. So it really cements the knowledge of understanding. Okay, would it be the same for labour? Yeah, so in terms of labour, instead of being kilograms, it would be at the number of hours spent. Okay, so you'd have the number of hours it took to make product X, product Y, product Z. But here, with the assumption is, based on the information we've got loads of people, loads of labour, it's materials that's our real issue here. So for product Y, £1.60 divided by 0.8 gives me £2 per kilogram. Okay, remember, if I'm going through this a little bit quickly, I am kind of going to go through individual ones and then I'll go through the others a little bit more quickly. You can always go back and kind of like pause this video and then, you know, work through it and just to kind of go through it in chunks if there are bits that you get lost on. So product Z's £2.70 divided by £1 or 1.8 kilograms, or product Z gives me £1.50 per kilogram. Thank you, Isabella. Perfect. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Cool. Awesome stuff. Right. If I now look at those three products, okay, I know materials are what's restricting me. Materials are what I'm a scarce resource I need to make the best use of. Now, if my materials are a scarce resource, okay, then I want to make as much money as possible. So I'm going to produce product Y above anything else because it generates £2 per unit, sorry, £2 per kilogram, which is more than anything else. So I'm going to get the best return through making product Y. Product Z is the second best because it gives me £1.50. And product X at 125 is third best. It's still good, it still generates money, but if I've got a restriction on materials, then that's the one that I'm going to make last. Okay, so that's how I'm going to manufacture things. So what I now need to know is, well, how am I going to do this? Okay, so how many of each of them am I going to produce? So I know that I've got 1,600 kilograms available. Okay, so the amount of material is 1,600. And I know that I want to make, was it product Y first? So product Y, and we know product Y needs 480 kilograms to manufacture everything. Okay, and we know that that is 600 units. So product Y, the optimal production plan is to make 600 units of product Y. Then what I'd look at is if I take that 480 away, 1,600 minus 480, I've got 1,120 kilograms remaining. So I've still got plenty of material remaining. And I know after that, I'm going to go to the second best product, which is product Z. And product Z needs 720 kilograms. I've got 720 kilograms. I've got 1,120. So I've easily got enough. And that was to make 400 units. So I'm going to make 400 units of product Z. I'm going to make them all. Now, what does that leave me with? Well, that leaves me with not very much, doesn't it? Minus 720. That leaves me with just 400 kilograms. And I'm going to use that 400 kilograms to make product X. Now, product X needs 2 kilograms per unit. Okay, so I can just do the little sum here, which means the amount of production will be 400 divided by 2. So I will make 200 units in total. Units. Okay, that's my 8 marks. Okay, so there are bits of that I think are relatively straightforward. I think the black things that I've penned in black there, I think are quite nice and straightforward. There is that little trick about doing things the wrong way round. Okay, so just watch out for that, make sure we've read the question correctly. And then when it comes down to that bottom part, that's the part that takes a bit more time. But there are shortcuts we can take. Everything that I wrote in red, okay, are things that I think once you get into the swing of these questions, you probably can, take real shortcuts to actually get to. Okay, you wouldn't need to write all of that down. We know that the next question says, what's the profit that would be made? Okay, so if I calculated the profit, okay, this is where we need to just make sure that we're paying attention to the AAT being sneaky in this question. So the way that I would do it is I say we've got product X, product Y, product Z. Okay, they're the 3 products that I'm selling. Okay, now I know from my production plan I'm going to make 200 X's, 600 Y's, and 400 Z's. I know that's what I'm going to produce. And I also know that each X makes contribution of £2.50. Each Y makes contribution of £1.60. And each Z makes contribution of £2.70. So I can work out the total contribution from product X is 200 times 2.5 is 500. 600 times £1.60 is 960. 400 times 270 is 1080. And if I add those 3 together, I make that £2,540. That's my total contribution. Now, the thing that I think is really heartbreaking in this question is that I think there's going to be a load of students that are going to write that number down and they're going to put it in the answer. Now, why is that not the answer? What have I missed out? Perfect. Absolutely right, everyone. So people that are putting up there, loads of people are writing it down. Brilliant stuff. Okay, I absolutely love that. So absolutely right. You guys got it. Less the fixed costs. Okay, and the fixed costs here are 755. So less fixed costs of 755. And that will give me, I'm just going to write it here to make it fit in this page, a profit figure of 1785. That's my profit figure. So if I put that into my answer, 1785. Awesome. Now the AAT are going to have to program some stuff in this. Well, we know this question because it's got a written element. It's going to be looked at by a human marker. So, I mean, my assumption here, and I don't know this 100% for certain with a question like this, is that I would assume that they would give you credit for getting total contribution figure and putting it in there, but I'm not 100% certain that is the case. I know that they do give you marks for follow through being applied correctly in exams. I know they do give you marks for reasonable rounding errors that could be made. Okay, my assumption is I think it would be a little bit unfair to not give you any marks at all if you typed in the contribution figure, but I don't know that 100% for certain. So I always think that, you know, reading the question is so important, making sure we recognize that fixed cost. I love the fact that we flagged it up here. Okay, we mentioned it here. We didn't talk about that fixed cost for about, what, 20 minutes or so while we went through the other elements of the question. And then, you know, all of you guys that typed something in, everyone spotted, oh, the fixed cost, remember the fixed cost, we've got to do the fixed cost. Okay, so I think absolutely brilliant. Okay, really, really good. Cheers, guys. And then we're on to our written part. Explain why the company cannot fulfill its total sales demand, and why it's chosen to make the quantities of each product. You may use calculations to support your question. Okay. This, again, you know, needs to pass that test. Okay, it's got to pass the test, that the examiner has got to be confident that you understand this question and you understand this topic. So when it comes to explaining it, okay, my thoughts are always that you explain it as if you're talking to someone that doesn't know anything. They said, don't assume knowledge. Now, the only time you ever assume knowledge is if they tell you in the exam that you're speaking to the finance director. If you speak to the finance director, they've got some knowledge, okay, but anyone else doesn't. Okay, and I think that it was 2-3 weeks ago that I talked about the test that I always apply is if I was trying to explain to my nan what was happening. And if I was sitting down with my nan trying to explain to her what was going on in this business, what words would I use? And just guess for reference, my nan is not an accountant. She doesn't really deal with numbers particularly well. And she's kind of part of that generation where the finances were left to her husband. So she didn't really get an involvement in budgeting and stuff like that. And I had to, you know, to explain things to her, it means I use slightly different sorts of language. Okay, I don't make assumptions. Okay, I'm very, very clear. I break things down. I don't use jargon. Okay, so let me just check. Apparently we've got some sound on somewhere. Okay, that's cool. Cool. Just adjusted the sound there. Cool. So if we can try and keep the mute on your microphones if possible, that'd be great. Cool. So explain why the company cannot fulfill its total sales demands. Okay, well, we know why that is because of that limiting factor. And we know that there's a limiting factor that's restricting what we can do. Okay, so, you know, we're trying to explain why the company cannot fulfill its total sales demand. Now, what a lot of people will say is that the company can't meet its sales demand because it doesn't have enough material. Okay, now you're right. Okay, however, that for me doesn't show the full picture of what's going on. Okay, if I was trying to explain to my nan, you know, what the situation is here, I would want to give her a bit of context. Okay, so the kind of things that I would do is I would break this down and say that my first point, and I'm going to do this bullet pointing because I'm going to show the points that I'm making, but, you know, I would almost certainly be writing this as kind of more of a kind of a couple of paragraphs rather than bullet point. But the first point that I would make is to meet current demands, and it's annoying that they call it the business. I'd much rather they gave us a company name. The business needs 2,000 kilograms of material. Okay, so you said that's the situation right now. To meet current needs, we need 2,000 kilograms. I've set the scene. Okay, so I've told my nan This is what our business normally needs to operate. Okay? But then I'm saying that, well, there's a problem. Okay, and yeah, absolutely. Yep. Louisa was. Yes, price of profit was contribution from X, contribution from Y, contribution from Z. Take away the fixed costs. And this is being recorded, so I will ping out the link to the video, so you can just fast forward through to kind of like what 55 minutes in, and then you should be able to kind of go through that part if you need to. So it should all be there for you to look back at. Cool. So me currently needs business. We need 2,000 kilograms of material. Well, what's the problem? The problem is we know we don't have enough. Okay, so let's say, unfortunately, our supplier cannot deliver any materials this month. We could say due to a strike. This means we can only use the 1,200 kilograms we have in our warehouse. Okay, or you can say in inventory, in stock, however you want to do it. Okay, so this means we can only use the 1,200 kilograms in our warehouse. You're right, 1,600. Yes. Yeah, 1,600. Cool. Awesome. Okay. So this means we can only use the 1,600 kilograms that we have in our warehouse. Okay. As a result, cannot satisfy current demand, current levels of demand. So we're just telling our NAN, telling the examiner, okay, we understand the situation. To meet current demands of the business, we need 2,000 kilograms of material. Unfortunately, our supplier can't deliver any more materials due to a strike, okay, which means we can only use the 1,600 we have currently in our warehouse. As a result, we cannot satisfy the demand that's out there from our customers. Okay, so, and this would almost be kind of in the next section, to maximize the return we can make from the material we have, okay, so to maximize the return from the material we have, okay, we will focus on products that give the highest contribution per kilogram. Okay, I would write it out as contribution per kilogram. Okay, and we can say here, product, and what's it? Product Y gives highest return of £2 per kilogram and will be made first. Okay. Okay. We can say, I would then say, we have enough material to produce, or no, not to produce actually, to satisfy all of the demand for product Y. I'll just put in brackets there that was 600 units. Okay. So I go through to maximise the return, focus on the products that give us the highest cost of contribution per kilogram. Product Y gives us the highest contribution. We've got enough material to satisfy all this market. Product Y, 600 units. Okay, and then I realised what the time is. So the other things that I would then go on to is I would then say, you know, after product Y, we still have materials. Okay, so then I would talk about after that what we would do, and then I would say that product Z is the next best. I'll talk about how we produce product Z, and then I would talk about we still have materials, and I would finally say we'd use the rest of our materials to make product X. Okay. Awesome stuff. That's quite a lot there. Okay, I think that'll be a very, very full answer to put together. I do think that it is important that you explain this part here about why it is that we're unable to meet total sales demand. I'd be looking there. We're looking at 7 marks. We know there's an and, so I'd be thinking here that I'll be looking at a maximum of kind of 3 marks for this part of the question. Again, I think as we've written 4 sentences there, that's easily going to be 3 marks worth of work. Okay, so we probably could, you know, put a couple of those together or paraphrase it a little bit and still get enough marks here. And this part here, I'm thinking 4 marks here. We've easily got 4 marks here. Okay, that first part in terms of explaining what we're doing, that makes complete sense to do that. Talking about product Y, I'd be thinking that there's probably a mark, maybe 2 marks for product Y, same then for product Z, same then for product X, and just going through our process of what we'd end up doing. Okay, a very, very full answer we have there. What a lot of people are going to do, thing we mentioned before, the trap not to fall into is if you ignore the and, you're going to be sitting there with getting 3 marks. You're going to think you've done really, really well, but you've got 3 marks out of 7 because you've ignored the other side of the and. Okay, so the biggest problem is number 1, forgetting the and. The second biggest problem is missing out a lot of the things we put there because we assume the examiner knows stuff. Okay, and it's something that I always struggle with when I mark my own students' work. So if I gave you a full mock exam and said, send it in to me for marking, okay, and I look through it, I'll go through and go, oh, question 1, brilliant, you are awesome. Okay, awesome. Question 2, you're really good. Question 3, you're brilliant. And I start to feel really good about you because you're doing really, really well. And then I get to this question, and it's a bit brief, but because you've been so good in questions 1 through to 6, I'm instantly thinking, you know your stuff. So I make assumptions about what you know based on all of the early work you've got. And that's the way that I work, and most markers will tend to work. In the exam, the person marking your exam hasn't seen any of your earlier work. So you can't rely on the fact that questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were good and showed good knowledge, because the marker's only going to be looking at question number 7. Okay, so you do have to make sure you showcase your knowledge in every written question. And just remember, the person marking it is going to have seen most of your exam. They're likely to put a link between the other part of the exam. The way a lot of markers will work now is they'll get 100 exam scripts, and they'll just mark all of the question 7s in one big batch, and then they'll mark a different question in one big batch, and they won't necessarily make a link between your questions and what you said in one question and what you said in another one. So showcase your knowledge in the written parts of every question that you do. Okay, I realise now we've got a little bit longer, kind of a little bit past 8 o'clock, so I'm going to call the evening to a stop there. So I'm going to stop the recording in a second. Just a couple of things. Hopefully, I'm going to see you guys next week. Okay, so I'm going to be running these sessions for kind of as long as we feel we need them. So I think it will be the case that while we're in lockdown, definitely when you guys can start sitting exams, I expect we'll probably be running a few sessions over that period of time. But I really hope that we can all get into a position where the moment that the AAT allow us to take exams again, we can take the exams really quickly, we can all pass them, and then we can all hopefully complete our qualification. Those of you that don't have it, I think most of you should. But my email address, feel free to drop me an email. So davidmalthouse@fi.co.uk. Okay, feel free to email me. Can I ask you, if you did enjoy the sessions today and you really do like these, I thank you very much for the thanks and all those kind of things. But you know, we did decide a few weeks ago that it would be a really nice idea to kind of share this with everyone. What we'd really appreciate, Candice, if you've got friends or colleagues that are studying for their AAT exams, please share this with them. And if you could, and you feel brave enough to and you want to, if you could just make a couple of, if you could make comments maybe like on our Facebook pages, or just make general comments to say that you've enjoyed them, it would mean a lot to us if you could do that. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely amazing. If not, drop me an email. I will be emailing everyone out a link to the video and a link to next time's questions as well. Okay, we'll be doing a different subject like financial statements. Yeah, the financial statements is on Thursday, Louise. So yeah, drop us an email. Look on our website. There's a financial statements one on Thursday. It's run by Kelly. I know that she's had loads of people on that one over the last few weeks. So yeah, drop me an email. Do I do internal control? I'll check through some of the chat. They're all coming through really, really quickly now. If you are looking for another subject, look on our website. If you go to fi.co.uk, look on the hub, drop down menu there, and then on that hub there is a little article that's all about all of these, all of the links to all of the individual sessions. We're doing more and more of them kind of as time goes on, just to kind of help people. Am I doing credit control? I don't know if there is a revision session at the moment. I know that I am actually teaching a credit control class in the next couple of weeks. The next couple of weeks, I think it's June actually. So I know once that class is run, if we don't have any exams running at that time, I will definitely be running some kind of at that time, so it's kind of midsummer. So keep an eye on those things as they come through. I'm going to thank you very much, Alexandra. That is perfect. So anyone that hasn't seen that, there is a link in the chat. So I will leave this open for a bit. If anyone wants to go into the chat, click on that link and it will show you a link to all of the sessions that are currently running. There is something that I'm going to be running in the next kind of week or so. I've been asked by some of my students to run a kind of a financial maths class. So what I'll be doing in that is I'll be looking at the maths that you need to be an accountant. So this isn't going to be a kind of an A-level maths class or anything like that. It's very much going to be if you need help with how you put things into a calculator. It's going to kind of go up to the maths you need at ACCA level. If anyone does want to do that, I'm more than happy to add you guys onto that. So again, just keep an eye on that page on the hub. We'll be adding more classes as things go through. So if you are interested in that maths session, feel free to let me know. I will be emailing out. Recorded sessions, are they available? I'm not sure about how long the sessions are available online. They're hosted by Zoom, so it's as long as Zoom allow them to be around, they will be there. So I would get there to take a look at them. I'm not sure about the technicalities of it. You may be able to download them, I'm not sure, but if you can download them, feel free to do so. Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you for all the messages in the chat, guys. I will take a look at them. I'm going to stop recording now so we don't kind of get me just talking through the chat sessions over the end of the recording to keep it down a little bit. So I'm going to switch that off. So thank you, guys.